Hello everyone, and welcome to the second part of Deep Autoregressive Models. Today we are going to dive into audio generation using the WaveNet model. First, let's look at how digital audio data is structured and defined, which is known as the waveform. You may have seen this structure before, but let's dive deep into its building blocks. We can see that the waveform is comprised of many samples, and usually each sample is in the range of -1 to 1. Zooming out a bit, we can look for example at 1 second of audio data samples. So, how many samples are there in 1 second of audio? It can range from 8,000 to 16,000 or more. This number dictates the sampling rate of the audio, meaning how many samples exist per second. To understand the difference better, I will change my voice's sampling rate for you to hear it. This is how the audio sounds at a 22 kHz sampling rate. Now I'll switch to 16 kHz. As you can hear, it still sounds good because the sampling rate is high enough to capture most of the audio details. Next, let's try 8 kHz, where the quality starts to noticeably degrade. Finally, at 4 kHz, the audio becomes very poor and loses much of its clarity. As you can see, in order to get high-quality audio output, a higher sampling rate is needed. Back to our samples, we can mark each sample in a sequential order. Therefore, we can write an audio signal as a probability distribution, P of x, which can be written as the joint probability of all the samples in the signal. P of x is the probability that this specific combination of samples results in a natural audio signal. Recall from the previous part that the joint probability can be equally written as a chain of conditional probabilities. This means that we can predict the next sample given all the previous samples up to the current one, and the probability distribution tells us how likely our prediction is. By doing this for all the samples one after another, we can sequentially generate all the samples in the signal. This is autoregressive generation. Let's see exactly how this is done in WaveNet. We mark the input samples as blue dots, meaning each input sample is represented by a single dot. Similarly, we mark the output samples as orange dots. If we lay out the input samples like this, we need the output samples to be shifted to the left. This is because we want to keep our model causal. We define a 1D kernel, say a kernel size of 2 with learnable weights, and we slide it across our input to generate the output. As a quick reminder, to predict x sub t, we apply the kernel over x sub t minus 1 and x sub t minus 2, multiplying them by the kernel weights and summing the results. We do this for each pair of inputs to generate the corresponding output. But as you know, in a deep learning model, we use multiple hidden layers between the input layer and the output layer to learn complex patterns in the data. Now we can follow this logic to see how a sample is generated from the input layer all the way to the output layer. This is how causal convolution works. As you can see, for each output sample, we can trace back which input samples took part in its generation. The samples participating in the generation of a single sample, it is what is known as the receptive field. As we discussed, for high-quality audio, we have 16,000 samples per second. To build a good generative model, we need to look at meaningful chunks of the speech signal. However, we can't rely solely on stacking layer after layer just to add one more sample to the receptive field, as that would result in a massive and slow network. This is where dilated convolution is introduced. A dilation factor of 1 is just the regular convolution we already know. A dilation factor of 2 means that we are skipping every other sample using 1 out of every 2 samples from the layer below. Similarly, we can use dilation factor of 4, 8, and further up. For a kernel size of 2, dilated convolution doubles the receptive field with each additional layer as the dilation factor grows. This is a crucial component of the WaveNet model as it allows us to dramatically increase the receptive field. With each hidden layer we add, we are multiplying our receptive field exponentially. During training, we have access to all the samples in the audio signal, so we can easily train the model in parallel using a single forward pass. But during inference, things change. In order to generate the next sample, we must wait for the previous output to be fed back into the input. Then, we proceed to generate the next sample, which is then fed back into the input once again to compute the subsequent output. We repeat this process iteratively to generate the entire signal sample by sample, where each generated sample requires its own forward pass. This means that to generate just 1 second of audio at a 16 kHz sampling rate, we need to perform 16,000 forward passes. So, generating a sample with causal, dilated convolutions, using 3 hidden layers for this example, results in the following receptive field. This is the exact length of the receptive field required for each individual sample. Therefore, when generating x sub t, we don't need to process the entire audio signal from the very beginning. It is entirely sufficient to generate it by using only the samples that fall within its receptive field, which significantly reduces complexity during inference. When we put all these concepts together, we can construct the full WaveNet model. We start by taking our raw audio input and feeding it into an initial causal convolution. We do this in order to project the single channel input into a hidden representation with C channels. Then, we pass it into our main processing blocks, starting with the dilated convolution layer. Here, the dilation factor grows exponentially, depends on the layer index dictated by 2 to the power of k. K is the layer index within the stack. For example, if we start counting from 0, the 4th layer will use a dilation factor of 2 to the power of 3, which equals 8. The output of this dilated convolution has twice the number of channels as its input. The reason is the gated activation unit. So next we feed this output into the gated activation unit. This activation mechanism splits the channels into 2 equal groups. The filter group, which goes through a hyperbolic tangent activation, and the gate group, which goes through a sigmoid activation function. We then perform an element-wise multiplication of these 2 groups to yield an activated output of C channels. From there, we branch this output into 2 parallel paths using 1x1 convolutions. The first path is the residual 1x1 convolution, which acts as a learnable linear mapping to mix the activated features across channels. We then directly add it back to the block's initial input to form the residual connection, which then serves as the input for the very next block. The second path is the 1x1 skip convolution, which transforms the features into S channels. These skip outputs are preserved and collected at the very end of the model. We repeat these blocks n times, often looping the dilation factors in multiple stacks to extract meaningful features, capture complex temporal patterns, and continuously expand our receptive field. To generate our final prediction, we take all the intermediate outputs from the skip convolution layers and sum them together. We feed this combined signal through 2 times of a ReLU activation and a 1x1 convolution. This final convolution projects the features into the number of discrete quantization bins rather than a single channel, allowing the softmax layer to output a clean probability distribution over all possible values for the next sample. Usually, a single audio sample is represented by 16 bits, which means that each sample can take on one of over 65,000 discrete values. Trying to predict a probability distribution over that many categories would increase the complexity of our model's output layer dramatically. To tackle this, the authors suggest using mu-law companding, which is defined by the following formula. Here, mu defines the quantization scale, which is typically set to 255. The graph of this function looks like this logarithmic curve. So how does it work? We take an audio sample from our signal, for example this one, and plug it into the mu-law formula. We can visualize its behavior right here on the graph. Because the output of this formula is always between -1 and 1, we scale and shift it to a range of 0 to 255, and then round it to the nearest integer. This gives us the exact categorical class we want our model to predict. Now, instead of choosing from 65,000 values, the softmax function only needs to predict a probability distribution over 256 discrete classes. The true power of mu-law companding is that it quantizes the signal in a non-linear fashion. It allocates more quantization levels to lower amplitude sounds and fewer to higher amplitude sounds. This perfectly mimics human hearing, as our ears are far more sensitive to subtle variations in quiet sounds than to variations in very loud sounds. Let's train a WaveNet model on the LJ speech dataset and resample the audio to 16,000 Hz for a great balance between lighter processing and high quality. Each audio sample in this dataset comes paired with its corresponding text transcript. For our architecture, we will use 2 stacks of 10 layers each, which gives us a total receptive field of 2048 samples, or 128 milliseconds of audio context. Once our model is trained, the primary goal is to see if it can synthesize realistic speech. You can hear what the resulting output sounds like right now. Just like we saw with PixelCNN, when we don't guide the generation process, the model learns the structural features of human speech, but the output has absolutely no semantic or phonetic meaning. It ends up sounding like a realistic yet completely unintelligible mumbling of speech-like sounds. This problem leads us directly to Conditional WaveNet. Here, we guide the generation process by conditioning the model on an auxiliary feature vector, h. We inject this conditioning vector directly into the gated activation unit and adding it to our dilated convolution outputs. This conditioning vector can be any information that helps us guide the output. It can be the raw text, the MEL spectrogram, or a speaker ID to control the voice's characteristics. However, there is a catch. A MEL spectrogram, for instance, is a matrix of frequency bins across time frames, whereas the waveform is a 1D array of audio samples over time. Because their temporal lengths do not match, we cannot simply add them together. To resolve this alignment issue, we can pass our conditioning features through a transposed convolution layer. This allows the network to learn how to upsample the lower frequency condition matrix until its temporal length perfectly matches the audio input. This same alignment strategy applies to text conditions, where the number of characters, words, or phonemes is vastly smaller than the number of raw audio samples. By applying these conditional constraints, WaveNet transforms from a random babble generator into a highly sophisticated text-to-speech engine. So, let's train a conditional WaveNet, where our conditioning feature will be the MEL spectrogram. We can use the same model architecture as before, while the MEL condition will be fed into each block along the network. Just for context, let's briefly look at what a MEL spectrogram actually is. To generate a MEL spectrogram, we take small overlapping chunks of our waveform and apply a discrete Fourier transform, or DFT in short. Without going too deep into the math, this essentially extracts the frequency information from the signal. Each chunk gives us a single time frame, capturing the active frequencies within that short window. We apply this DFT across the entire waveform using these small overlapping chunks to generate a standard spectrogram. To turn it into a MEL spectrogram, we apply two more steps, MEL filter banks and a logarithmic scale, which we won't dive into here. Ultimately, this MEL spectrogram serves as a highly compressed representation of our audio signal. In the context of audio processing, a model that takes a MEL spectrogram and synthesizes a raw time domain waveform is known as a vocoder. Let's see what results we get from training our MEL-conditioned WaveNet. We took the following true original signal and extracted its MEL spectrogram. You can hear how it naturally sounds now.
Printing, in the only sense with which we are at present concerned, differs from most, if not from all, the arts and crafts represented in the exhibition.
Now, when we pass that MEL spectrogram through our trained WaveNet, we get the following output.
Printing, in the only sense with which we are at present concerned, differs from most, if not from all, the arts and crafts represented in the exhibition.
So, as you can hear, it is not absolutely perfect. It might sound a bit robotic in places or miss a few subtle pronunciations, but at the end of the day, it produces a highly natural speech signal. We can take this even one step further and use this conditional WaveNet vocoder to build a full text-to-speech pipeline. This is done by training an upstream acoustic model that transforms raw text into a MEL spectrogram. Then, we can use our exact pre-trained WaveNet vocoder to generate the final audio from that spectrogram. This architecture is known as Tachotron 2. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found this content helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you here in the upcoming videos.